But don't put me on the record yet.
Okay.
Well,
Or was just bad?
no, because, well,
Mr. Williams?
just run that line that he was pumping the basement out into his backyard. It was soaked down through and ended up coming over to me.
Mr. Williams?
See, before
Yeah.
it was so severe that he just dug it.
Well,
Good
I've
morning.
got, good morning. I've got two matters scheduled for 8:30, but one a trial and one an evidentiary hearing. It looks like you're the only one here so far in the Russell versus Dak matter.
I believe so, Judge. Did you get my exhibits in brief last night?
Last night,
I sent
don't know.
them to
Did
your
you email?
secretary.
I haven't logged into my email this morning, so I don't know if
Well,
there's
no,
anything
I
waiting.
did. Judge, I sent them to your secretary.
Well, then she would have forwarded them to me.
Oh, okay.
And I haven't looked to see whether or not she's done that, but if you hold on, I will check.
Okay.
All right, well, so far there's nothing there. Have you had any communication with Mr. Linton?
Well, I sent an email to your secretary last week. He called me last week wanting to adjourn this matter to a date when he could have an in-court type of hearing. I sent an email to into your office last week saying that I would leave that to your discretion, but we're ready to go today. So that's where I am.
Well, I also have another matter that's ready to go right now. Mr. Linton's not here. I would be open to adjourning the matter, but until I have Mr. Linton present, I'm not going to do anything. So I'll keep an eye on the waiting room. I'll put you back in there, and I'm going to pull the other folks in and get rolling on that one.
Judge, could I get your email address? I could send these things directly to you.
Send them to my court officer. PVELDKAMP at mijackson.org.
Okay, that's PELDKL. What was that? PELD?
All right. It's Peter.
KEMP?
Well, why don't you listen? Peter Veldkamp.
Okay.
PVELDKAMP.
Okay. At mijackson.org.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll put you back in the waiting room now.
Thank you, Judge.
Yikes.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Okay, Shannon, you can put us on the record.
Okay.
Okay, we're here on the matter of King versus Sharp. And let's see, we've got David Jones on behalf of Mr. Sharp. Chris Hurlbert is the LGAL. Brenda King is present. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can. Good morning.
And Robert Sharp is present. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, anything preliminary, Mr. Jones or Mr. Hurlbert?
Preliminary for me, Your Honor, is my client contacted me asking me not to represent him anymore and that he could tell the court everything that he needed to tell the court himself. So I believe there's been a breakdown in the attorney-client relationship such that the objects of representation can no longer be achieved. So I would ask that you grant an oral motion for me to withdraw this morning.
Is that your desire, Mr. Sharp, that you wish to represent yourself?
Well, yeah, it comes down to finances. I've wasted a boatload of money on this kid
Sir,
not to see my son in 3 years.
I didn't ask you anything other than a yes or no question.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, I'm going to grant your motion. You may withdraw from representation.
All right, I will submit a written order to that effect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so before I get started with testimony, Mr. Sharp, let me ask you, what exactly is it that you are going to ask the court to grant you, assuming you're successful with your proceeding today?
I'm going to ask the court to, I'm done with this crap. I'm never coming in front of you again. I hate every one of you. I hate Brenda King. I'm writing this kid off until he gets to the age he can tell you all to shove it and he wants to see me. I hate every one of you. You ain't never going to let me see my son. I spent thousands on she sold my kid for a car, some food, and some money. I got scammed by her attorney. I am done with you people. Christopher Holbert, you either remove yourself from all my cases, sir. You came back on that after that court. My buddy who teaches at St. Mary's seen you. You came back on that Zoom thing after court was done. You were biased towards me. Christopher Holbert has been the biggest piece of crap that I've ever paid taxes on in my life. And he's biased towards me from day one. It cannot be this way. You're supposed to be in the best interest of my son.
Mr. Sharp?
Yeah.
It sounds like you're withdrawing your motion. Is that correct?
I hate every one of you. I'm never going to see you again. You got it?
All right. I will grant your motion.
Don't bother me for nothing. You tell Brenda King to shove it, and I hope she dies.
Based on your request, I am going to withdraw the motion, and we will have no further need to proceed today. Mr. Hurlbert, was there anything you wanted to say?
No, Your Honor. Ethan's doing
You're
fine.
a piece of shit, Christopher. You're a piece of shit. You're a fucking piece of shit. You're a fucking piece of shit. The judge them.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Hurlbert.
That's fine.
Thank you for your assistance in this matter.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. King, have a good day. There's no need for you to stick around.
Thank you.
Have a good day, Chris.
Thank you. You too, Your Honor.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah. Wow.
So we'll need to do an order at the request of the moving party. His motion is withdrawn, and you'll have to look back in the file and figure out what the motion was. It was filed by David Jones.
Okay.
So if you look through the file, you'll be able to find it. Well, should I have asked Mr. Sharp what he really thinks? We able to get anything from Mr. Williams?
Nothing's come across my email yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that perhaps he didn't get the email address right.
Yeah, I looked for an email address for him.
Oh, yeah. Okay, matter of Russell versus Dak. Counsel, could you each state your appearances, please?
David Williams on behalf of plaintiff.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And is your I'm sorry, Mr. Williams, is your client present with you?
Yes, he is.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Clinton on behalf of Dean and Tasha Dack, and they are present.
All right, can you crank your volume up just a little bit, Mr. Linton? We're having trouble picking you up.
Sure. If I stand closer here, if it'll help.
Well, I can turn my volume on the speaker up a little, but it may result in Mr. Williams blasting us away, but let me see it. Let me try that. Find the right button. Okay, Mr. Linton, who else is present with you?
Tasha and Dean Dack.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, the other matter I had scheduled for this morning has gone away, so I can give you my undivided attention. Do you wish to make opening statements?
Well, Your Honor, we had requested, I don't know if the court's going to compel us to go forward. It's difficult to do this trial by Zoom with the clients here with the masks on, and they had wanted to do an in-person trial. So I don't know what the court's position is on that. I know Mr. Williams does want to proceed.
I appreciate the desire to be here in person, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon based on the current restrictions in place and the new ones that appear to be coming into place on Wednesday. I have conducted trials via Zoom. Frankly, as long as you get all your exhibits in ahead of time, I don't feel like anything is lost in the process. As long as I'm able to see the witnesses, as long as you have decent internet connections, from my perspective, it works just fine. So my inclination is to proceed today. Mr. Williams, we still don't have anything from you.
Your Honor, I just sent those out again. I had sent my other ones to Patty. And
I don't doubt that, but Patty is not in, and I'm not sure when she's going to be in. It looks like she's going to be out for a period of time, so there's nobody checking her email. That's why I asked you to send it to my law clerk so I can get it.
I just sent them again. Did he get them?
No, my guess is you've got the email address wrong. Could you read back to me the address you used?
Yes, PELDKAMP.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let's try it over again, okay?
Okay.
Get your pen ready.
Okay.
His name is Peter Veldkamp. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Veld. Now I'm going to spell it to you. P as in Peter, V as in Victor, ELDKAMP at mijackson.org. Let's try it again with the right address.
Yeah, it only take me a minute, Judge.
We'll wait. Make sure you copy Mr. Linton if you didn't already do that.
I think he's already received them.
So, Mr. Linton, while we're waiting on Mr. Williams, did you have any submissions other than your trial brief?
No, nothing by the court. The DAX had brought some documents with them to refer to for the testimony.
Okay. So was that your first encounter with Mr. Sharp?
I think it was, yeah.
That's a pretty typical
Is it?
put him in the holding cell at least once, probably twice.
Really?
He'd come into court and he'd do the same thing. He'd just rant and rave.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be quiet when I would tell him, all right, I'm warning you.
You were gonna have a
We're gonna-
conversation with that guy.
No, it's impossible.
You should print off these attachments once they come across, Judge.
Yes, please. And also forward them to me,
Okay.
just in case there's color photographs or something. I can view them better on the screen, since we can't print in color. So has it been sent?
Yeah, I just sent them, Judge. It should be on its way. It took a little bit because it's their PDF forms.
I'll let you know when they come in.
Judge, I could address a preliminary matter before we go.
Okay, that'd be good. Go ahead.
In exhibits 1 and 2 that I've attached to my exhibits, we found out last Friday that the property that's owned by the Dax was foreclosed last December 30th. A sheriff's deed was issued to the mortgage company. And over the weekend, I went to the Register of Deeds and checked, and it still shows the ownership of the property that's owned by Dax, or was owned by Dax, is still belonging to the mortgage company. So I'm questioning their standing in their filing of the counterclaim.
Well, depending on when the deed got recorded, there's still a statutory right of redemption. Mr. Linton, are you familiar with that circumstance that Mr. Williams just addressed?
Yes, Your Honor. So the docs did indicate that it was a home equity loan that is the foreclosing entity, and they are in the process of refinancing and are working with them. So, they're not going to lose their residence, and they're working with the mortgage company.
Right, and they're still within their statutory redemption period.
That I'm not sure, because it was recorded on the December of 2019. I believe technically it's a 6-month statutory redemption period, if I understand the foreclosure law.
Are they still in possession of the property?
Yes, Your Honor, they are.
Get anything yet, Peter?
Nothing.
Mr. Williams, could you read back the email address you used again?
Letter P, F like Frank, E, L, D, K.
Mr.
K.
Williams, Mr. Williams, Mr. Williams, let me
Yeah.
stop you. I spelled it phonetically for you. I said P as in Peter, V as in Victor.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, Judge.
Sounds like he's starting from scratch again instead of just forwarding that email. But I don't even want to try to explain that.
Judge, my documents are loading right now. Judge, I just sent the thing again.
We're watching for it.
Here, go down to the sign, the painters, right?
We still don't have anything, Mr. Williams. All right, let's try one more time. I want you to slowly read to me the email address you're using.
Okay, the letter P like Paul, V like Victor, ELD, KAMP.
Judge, I just got him.
Oh, he just got them.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
All right, so forward that to me, Peter, and then go ahead and print it. Okay, I now have them on my computer. I'm opening them up. I'm going to take just a moment to read the trial brief. Can that serve in lieu of an opening statement, Mr. Williams?
Yes, it would, Judge.
All right, give me just a moment. Okay, thank you. I've had a chance to read it, and I've also read your brief, Mr. Linton. Are we ready to proceed with testimony?
Yes, Your Honor.
Who's your first witness?
William Russell, Your Honor. I'm going to turn my computer so he can be seen too, Judge.
Okay.
For the
All
record,
right.
would you please state your full name and address?
Well, let me put him under oath first.
Okay.
Mr. Russell, would you raise your right hand, please? You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your full name for the record.
William R. Russell.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, what is your current address?
12301 Kimler Road, Kimler, Eaton Rapids, Michigan.
And how long have you owned that property?
Going on 30 years.
And am I correct that the DAC property is contiguous with your property?
Correct.
And you originally filed this complaint because Mr. DAC had posted signs that were visible to people entering your property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what did those signs say?
One said, Bill is a bitch, and I'd have to look at the photograph that I took.
Okay, did they remove after we filed suit, did they remove those signs?
Yes, they did.
And you're basically asking the court that they not be allowed to repost that or similar sign, correct?
That's correct.
And as far as your complaint is concerned, the only damages you were requesting are your costs of filing this, correct?
That's correct.
Now, there was a counter complaint filed against you, was there not?
Yes.
And it raised several issues about your property and their property. Was that correct?
That is correct.
The first issue they raised was that you had a zoning issue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so, Mr. Williams, Mr. Williams, let me stop you. I think what I'd like to do is address the plaintiff's claims first. And since defendants have the burden of proof on their counterclaim, once we've moved away from plaintiff's claims, then I would have Mr. Linton proceed with proofs, and then your client would have a chance to testify in response. It's a little backwards to have you defend the counterclaim before I've heard the counterclaim.
Fine, Judge, that's fine.
So, Mr. Linton, would you like to cross-examine the plaintiff concerning his testimony regarding his initial claim?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, just want to be clear, your name is William Russell, correct?
That's correct.
But the signs actually were naming someone named Bill, correct?
That's what I'm known as, yes.
And do you recall, you don't recall what the signs actually said?
Well, it's been so long ago. I know there was a couple very derogatory. I don't know if I have a current picture of them. I know there was two. Yes, I have. One said Bill is a bitch, and the other one said Bill is a peeping Tom.
All right, and thank you. So Mr. Russell, did you on numerous occasions continue to look through the fence at the Dax property and home?
No, I did not. They
And-
only recently put the fence up before they put the signs up.
Oh, and so after the sign or the fence was put up, though, did you repeatedly keep looking through the fence?
No, I did not. There was no reason to.
And did it come a point where the Dax actually informed or asked you to stop trying to spy on them because they felt like you were peeping onto their property?
I don't recall a conversation between the Dax and I. They're not very willing to talk to the neighbors.
And where is that sign in relation to the mill operation? Where were the signs, I'm sorry, the signs placed in relation to the mill operation?
The signs are on the north side of my driveway as you start to come into my property, approximately 40 to 50 foot off of the road. My mill operation is several hundred yards back.
And is that the only means of coming in or leaving the mill operation?
That's correct.
And so people that were coming to the mill operation would have to come by the Dax property, correct?
They would have to come down the driveway, which is adjacent to Mr. Dax's property. That's correct.
All right. And how many customers do you estimate would come by that property or come by those signs where they were located?
It could vary. I have no accurate number of how many people, only that all of my customers would have to come by those signs.
Do you have up to 10 or 20 customers a day, or how many customers?
No, I don't have that many.
But you actually have customers coming to the mill itself.
I guess I'm a little confused as to what you're asking. Yes, if they were coming to have lumber sawed, they would come down the driveway. Anyone coming onto our property has to come down that driveway.
Okay, so the mill is operated in a manner in which you actually have customers coming on site to request services.
That's correct.
So you're not just milling wood and then shipping it out somewhere else.
I guess I don't understand the question.
So you have to have customers come on site. This isn't just where you have some lumberyard ordering lumber from you and then you're shipping it to whatever store or lumberyard is ordering it, correct?
No, I don't deal with any commercial type of companies. They're only an individual that has 1 or 2 logs or 3 or 4 logs that they wish to have sawn and dried.
Okay, so it requires the customer to come to you in order to order whatever their needs are, correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Russell, isn't it true that the property actually was zoned residential until 2018?
No, I'm not aware of that. As far as I know, my operation has always been legal and falls under the Right to Farm Act and some other ones. I'm not an attorney, obviously.
Well, so you're not aware if the property was zoned residential until approximately 2018?
No,
Did you ever apply for the property to be rezoned agricultural?
no.
So approximately how many customers say were able to view the sign based up by the parents?
Could you
I can't
repeat
say
that,
for
Mr.
sure.
Mr. Lynn? Let me stop you. You faded out just a little bit. I didn't hear the whole question. Could you repeat it, please?
I asked, how many customers do you believe would have viewed the signs that were coming to the mill?
So your question is how many people would have seen these signs while they were up?
Well, part of your complaint is that they were able to be viewed by your customers. So I'm asking how many of your customers would have viewed these signs.
Any of my customers that came down the driveway would see it because it's there. You cannot come into my property without passing these signs within 20 foot of the driveway.
But my question is, how many?
I don't know how many. I didn't keep track of the time that the signs were up and how many people came in and out. I'm sorry, but I'm not aware of that.
Well, you have
And
claimed.
so, look, Mr. Lynn, let me stop you. It sounded to me like the plaintiff was withdrawing any claim for damages resulting from the signs. He was simply asking for a permanent injunction and costs. So your question, at least to me, if he were pursuing a claim for money damages, certainly it would be significant how many people saw this. But since he's not, is this, and I realize Mr. Williams not making an objection, but what's the point of your questioning?
Your Honor, actually at this point, I'll withdraw it. I've established what I was looking to do at this point. So I would have no further questions on regarding his complaint in chief.
Okay, thank you. Any redirect on solely the issue of the plaintiff's claims, Mr. Williams?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Let's move then to Mr. Linton, and we'll hear the defendant's claims, and of course they can respond to plaintiff's claims as well.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. So the defendant counter plaintiffs would call one of the defendants, Dean Dack.
Mr. Dack, would you raise your right hand, please? You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your full name for the record.
Alan Dack.
How do you spell Alan?
A-L-A-N.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's pretty obvious how you spell Dean and Dack, so I won't ask you to spell those. Go ahead, Mr. Linton.
Thank you. So Mr. Dack, can you tell me where you reside?
12315 Schindler Road, Eaton Rapids, Michigan.
And is that near or adjacent to a property owned by a Mr. William Russell?
Yes, sir, it is.
And how long have you lived at that location?
32 years, going on 33.
And besides the residence that you're staying or live at, is there any other property you own in that area?
Yes, I own 2 residential properties north of mine.
And where are they in relation to your residence?
Right next door.
And where are they in relation to Mr. Russell's residence?
All 3 of my properties are on the east side of Mr. Russell's property, the north and east side.
And can you recall approximately when Mr. Russell would have purchased the property at issue?
I'm pretty sure I'd lived there about 7 years, close to 10 years. There was a property line dispute.
And the property line dispute, when did that arise?
As soon as he purchased his property.
And what was the dispute regarding?
Existing property lines. There was a fence across the west side of my property that apparently was not the property line after.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this line of questioning. There was a dispute. There was a summary judgment issued in our favor by Judge Wilson, but that's irrelevant to the issues here.
I get that the property dispute doesn't bear on this. It perhaps helps the court understand that there's been a long period in which these 2 parties have not gotten along, but that's probably all I need to hear about that matter.
Okay, thank you. After Mr. Russell moved in, were there any modifications that he made to the property in relation to your property?
Yes. after Mr. Russell had moved in, across the back of my property running south and north was a 4-foot ditch that my above ground drain system, the Jackson County and the people that put my system in designed my system to run off into this existing drain ditch that ran across the back of my 3 properties.
And when was that drain ditch installed, if you know?
It was before I purchased the property. I was under the impression it was on my property line when I purchased my property. But after Mr. Russell had his property surveyed, it showed that the ditch was actually on his property. So he filled it in, not allowing the properties to drain properly.
And do you have any idea as to when that drain ditch was installed originally?
It was my understanding it was 50 years ago when the previous owners had owned the property.
All right, and so after Mr. Russell filled in the drain ditch, did he do anything else that affected your property?
Yes, along my south property line in between Mr. Russell's driveway and my property, which his driveway set probably a couple feet higher than my yard. Mr. Russell had went in and filled in 2.5 to 3 feet of wood chips. And then he put 12-inch logs all the way along our property line and filled it up with dirt so that there was a 12-inch berm minimum around 2 sides of my property, the low sides, so the water could no longer drain off my property.
So at that point, based on those 2 things of filling in the drainage ditch and then installation of the berms and raising up the driveway, what has been the impact on your property as a result?
In evidence, we showed that I'll get a couple feet of water in my backyard, and then the 2 properties that I own on the other side of my drain system, because he filled the back ditch in, there's a foot of water standing on those drain systems.
And was it like that prior to Mr. Russell taking that action that we discussed?
No, sir.
What was it like before Mr. Russell did so?
Mr. Russell's property, before he purchased it, out in front of his barn where the barnyard was at, they filled that up 3 or 4 feet, and that used to get really wet. And then his side yard and fields would get wet, but he fixed that.
And that caused problems with your particular properties?
Correct.
And what has been the damage, or what has been the problem with the water since that's been done by Mr. Russell?
I've had to have septic systems pumped out because we thought they were full when actually they were just full of water.
Have you had any other issues as a result of those changes?
Throughout the spring, I can't access my backyard because half of it's underwater.
And do you have a sump pump system installed in your basement?
Yes, I do.
When was that installed originally? Do you know?
1968, when they built the addition on my house.
And since you purchased the house, have there been any changes to the sump pump system that's installed?
No.
Can you describe for the court very briefly just how the system works?
When the water level raises, my sub pumps turn on and I eject the water out into the yard.
And how is it ejected into the yard?
I have a black pipe that after I installed my fence, I ran the water line over to the edge of the property line to try and divert it from the majority of my property.
And where was the water directed towards?
The south side of my property line along the fence, in between my fence and Mr. Russell's driveway.
And where did the drain line end as far as relation to where the fence was located?
It was around 6-8 inches from the edge of my fence.
And did there come a time where your basement flooded as a result of the sump pump failing?
Yes, our basement got 2 feet of water in it, ruining all kinds of stuff. Anyways, I couldn't understand why it wasn't draining, and I went out and checked the pipe. It had been pulled over towards my fence, and upon investigation, a piece of wood had been run on a wood lathe and jammed a foot up inside of the pipe so that the water couldn't come out of the pipe and just flooded my basement.
And so you indicated that the drain pipe had actually been pulled closer to the fence?
Yes,
And as a result of this wood plug that was in the line, it caused your sump system to back up?
correct.
Were you able to get the wood plug removed?
Yes, I cut a foot off the pipe, took pictures of a piece of wood that was in it, and then cut it out, and also took pictures of it afterwards.
And after you removed that wood plug, did your sump pump system work?
Correct.
Was it able to drain the basement eventually?
Yes.
As a result of your basement flooding, did you have any property damage or any issues as a result?
Yes, issues with my furnace that ruined my freezer, some chainsaws that were sitting on the ground, on the floor, Christmas ornaments, clothes, all kinds of stuff got ruined.
So regarding the furnace, do you have an estimate of how much that costs to repair?
No, we haven't been able to do that at this point. We're just heating with wood.
So you've lost complete use of your furnace.
Correct.
And why haven't you repaired it?
With COVID and my wife being unemployed and me pretty much unemployed, it's been a little difficult.
So it's due to the cost.
Correct.
Did you ever have an estimate as to how much it would cost to repair it?
No, I have not.
Regarding your other property, you have an estimate as to the value, as to the amount of loss you've experienced?
It's several $1,000s.
And why would it be that much? What was included in that?
Well, a freezer's $600 all by just for the freezer. And then, like I said, chainsaws that got flooded underwater, and small engines, and just all kinds of our stuff got flooded. Sentimental stuff.
And regarding signs, do you remember approximately when the fence between you and your property was installed?
Yeah, it was in the spring, 2018.
And after the fence was installed, did you have any issues with Mr. Russell?
I had issues when I was trying to put the fence up. We disputed over the property for so many years, and then when I finally put up a fence, he doesn't want me to put a fence up. He tried to get the township to stop me from putting the fence up.
All right, so after the fence was installed, though, were there any issues with Mr. Russell?
My tenant and neighbor had caught Mr. Russell several times peeking through my fence.
You said your tenant and neighbor?
Yes.
And was that the same fence that would be lining your property as well?
Correct.
Did you ever see Mr. Russell viewing or looking through the fence?
Yes, I've seen him peek through the fence when I've been outside in the backyard.
And when was the last time you heard?
It's been a
Say that
while.
again. I'm sorry, say that again. You broke up a little, Mr. Linton.
I said, when was the last time that occurred, that Mr. Russell was peeping through the fence towards your property?
It's sometime over the summer.
And how often would you say that had occurred?
It's hard to say. And like I said, my neighbor witnessed him doing it a couple
I'm
times.
going to object to what the neighbor said.
An objection is sustained. That's hearsay.
So if you could just testify as to what you.
I personally have witnessed it only a couple times.
Right. If I could just have one moment. Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor, for this witness.
Cross-examination, Mr. Williams.
Yes. Mr. Dack, when did you allege that you put in the ditch?
I did not put in a ditch.
You did not put in a ditch.
No.
Okay, and are you did you file a complaint with the township regarding the zoning and regarding the water issue?
I had made a complaint about the zoning issues, because Mr. Russell wouldn't leave me alone, and the township said that he was zoned residential, and so he should probably just leave me alone. I just wanted to be left alone.
My question is, was there any action against Mr. Russell regarding his zoning or his use of the property for doing milling?
No, sir.
And did you appeal that decision to the court?
There was no decision. They just told him that he was zoned residential, he wasn't zoned commercial, and that he should just leave me alone, and that's all I ever wanted. So I didn't pursue anything because it wasn't zoned commercial to begin with.
Do you know how many acres Mr. Russell owns?
Probably 110.
And when you had this issue with your basement, the basement filled up because of your sump pump failing, correct?
No, sir. The sump pump was working fine.
I thought you said earlier that the sump pump was not working.
The sump pump was pumping fine, but because the hose was blocked, it couldn't pump water out, but it was still running.
Okay, did the Springport Township Police Chief come out to your property?
They've been out to my property several times.
I'm asking if he came out to your property regarding this drain that you put in.
They said that Mr. Russell had complained about me draining water onto the side of his property.
And did they make you pull the black drain out because it was draining onto his property?
I pulled it 6 inches back onto my property line, which Mr. Russell kept pulling it back.
So you're saying that it was on Mr. Russell's property and you were told to move it back?
No, sir, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it was on my property line. He reached through the boards on the fence.
Okay, so what you're telling me is you were pumping water out of your basement right up to his property line. Is that correct?
Right to the edge of my property line, correct.
Did they tell you to move the line?
No, sir. Still on my property line.
After you indicated that you found that this ditch was on Mr. Russell's property, is that correct?
Yes. We're not talking about the same ditch, I don't think.
The ditch where you said that there was a ditch over on Mr. Russell's property that he found was on his property line, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, after that, did you make any reparations on your property to ditch it on your side of the line?
No. The Jackson County Health Department and the people who put in my system had put in a ditch off the side of my drain system to run back to the ditch that was across the back of the property that Mr. Russell filled in. After Mr. Russell filled in that property, I just let the ditch go.
Say that end of that again. I missed that. You let something go?
I just let the ditch go. I let it fill back in and didn't worry about cleaning it out because it just held water because Mr. Russell filled in the ditch across the back.
So I want to make sure I understand your drain that drains your basement.
No, they're two separate issues.
Well, I think they're tied together, but I want to make sure I understand that. At some point, your drain emptied into a smaller ditch that connected to the ditch that was actually on Mr. Williams' property. Did I understand that correctly?
No, sir.
What did you say? What did you say about the health department dug a ditch? I missed that. Explain.
I have an above ground drain system that the Jackson County Health Department made me install in 1988. When they
Now stop. Let me stop you. Do you mean a raised septic bed?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Go ahead.
And when they designed that system, because there was an existing ditch across the back of my property, which we assumed was on my property line, they had designed off the north side of the drain field a small crevasse that would allow the water to run back into that other ditch, just the drain runoff, not the drain runoff, just water runoff.
I got you. Not. It would drain your backyard into that ditch.
No, they're two separate issues.
Well, I'm not following you. I don't understand what the purpose of the drain adjacent to your drain field was.
It was something that the designers of my raised bed, something that them in the health department put in to drain the rainwater that ran off my raised bed back to this existing ditch.
I got you. That had nothing to do with the pipe that drains your basement then.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad I asked. I was confused.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Williams. Pardon the interruption.
Mr. Dack, have you seen the exhibits that I sent to your council?
Yes, I believe I have.
Okay, I want you to look at exhibit number 3. Is that a picture in front of your house?
Yes, sir, it is.
And does that accurately show the roadway in front of your house?
Yes, I believe so.
And am I correct that the roadway is higher and draining towards your front yard?
Yes, sir. It all runs towards the lake behind Mr. Russell's house.
And so the water draining off the road is also draining into your front yard, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it drains down the side and into the backyard. Correct.
Now, would you look at exhibit numbers 4 and 5?
Okay.
Are those pictures taken from Mr. Russell's property of the fence line we're referencing?
Yes.
And are those pictures accurate as to what is the existing condition there?
Yes, you can still see the logs that he put in to build up the berm.
Okay, Your Honor, I'll move for the admission of exhibits 3, 4, and 5.
Hold on, I wanted to look at, I hadn't looked at 5 yet. Any objection, Mr. Linton?
No objection.
Let me just ask a couple clarifying questions. So, Mr. Linton, looking at Exhibit 3, I see 3 houses in a row. Which house, which one is yours? Which one do you live in?
The one I live in is the one nearest to whoever's taking the picture.
Oh, okay. And the 2 other houses we can see are the 2 rental houses that you also own?
Yes, Your Honor.
The driveway that I see immediately, the first driveway in the picture, whose driveway is that?
That is my driveway. Whoever's taking the picture is actually standing in Mr. Russell's driveway.
Okay. And what direction is the picture facing?
North.
North?
Correct.
Okay, and then Exhibit 4, I see a low fence and then it increases in height towards the back.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that your residence that's depicted or one of your rentals?
That is my residence, Your Honor.
Okay. Where's the property line in relation to your fence?
In between that fence and where you can see the logs laying on the ground, the wood pieces. If you look all the way down the fence, that's where he built up the berm a foot.
Yeah, I heard you testify to that, but the only logs I see, other than one that looks like it's standing erect, maybe that's a fence post. I see some logs at the base of the fence. Are those the logs you're talking about?
Yes, Your Honor. That's where Mr. Russell built up the berm. And where the pine trees are at, that was built up 2 to 3 feet.
I got you.
That was a big ditch. All the water went there.
Looking at this picture, where is the plaintiff's driveway
To the left.
in relation
Your left finish. Sorry, Your Honor.
Sorry, Your Honor.
to the left of the trees?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we can't really see his driveway in this picture.
Correct, Your Honor.
Is that a fence post that I see at the very front of the photograph?
I believe it's for a gate on Mr. Russell's property. But yes.
Is that located on the property line?
No, Your Honor.
So again, I'm going to ask because I must not have understood the answer. Is your fence built pretty much on the property line?
About 6 inches to a foot. It varies off the property line.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you.
And this fence that we see, is that the fence that you were alleging that the plaintiff was peeking through?
Yes, Your Honor. The fence comes in 8-foot sections. And in between the 8-foot sections, you're supposed to cut little small pieces of board and fill all that in. Mr. Russell denied me access to his property to be able to finish the fence properly, which would have kept him from being able to peek through the fence.
All right. And let me see if I have any more questions. Exhibit 5. Whose buildings are those that we see just over the fence?
Those are my temporary garages. Well, one is a permanent garage, but the other ones are my temporary garages.
So is this the same fence we see in Exhibit 4?
Yes, Your Honor.
This is just farther back.
Yes, Your Honor.
Does your fence extend across the back of your property?
No, just down the side, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's helpful to me. Go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Dack, does the water from your property drain backwards towards the back of your property?
Yes, it tries to go to Cooper Lake.
Okay, so we're not only looking at drainage to the side of the property, we're also looking that there's drainage towards the back of the property. Is that correct?
Correct. Mr. Russell filled in a 4-foot ditch across the back of my property.
Okay. Is the ground any different back in the back of the property? Is it level?
No, Your Honor. No, no, Mr. Williams. His property is actually higher than mine at this point. It used to be lower, but now it's higher.
Do you have any pictures of the back of your property?
Yes. Yeah. And I have pictures of when Barry and Associates put in my drain field that shows the existing drain across the back of the properties.
So he has the video of the back of the property if you want it as requested here.
This is a video across the back of my property.
Gotta go really up close.
As you can see, it floods all out because the water can't get out.
Okay. So the area where that water is lower than the rest of your yard, is it not?
No, that one section of where it shows the water, that's right up to the property line.
But it's lower than the rest of your yard, correct?
Oh, that one section there in the middle is correct. That's after the water's receded though, too.
Your property was foreclosed last December, was it not?
Objection, Your Honor. I don't see the relevance of this line of questioning.
I realize the issue was addressed initially, but I'm not sure we actually have a record on it. I'll allow him to ask the question.
There was a sheriff's deed issued last December where the property was foreclosed.
Not that I'm aware of.
Didn't your attorney say that December 30th, there was a sheriff's deed issued?
That's because of some paperwork that you filed.
Oh, and have you tried to redeem the property?
I still own the property and we are negotiating refinancing for the home equity line of credit on that property.
Are you denying that there was a sheriff's deed issued on December 30th of last year?
I honestly, reading it in your paperwork is the first I've seen it. I've been in contact with the mortgage company. But as far as a sheriff's sale or whatever, that's first I've heard of it.
I have no further questions, Sid.
Thank you.
I've got a few, Mr. Linton. This ditch that ran across the back of your properties that Mr. Williams filled in, do you know what that ditch connected to before it was filled in?
Yes, to the north of my properties, there is a wetland, and that ditch ran to that wetland. But Mr. Russell tried to drain that also.
Mr. Russell tried to drain the wetland?
Yes, he's dug a 8-foot deep trench across the back of his property. Actually runs onto my cousin's property up the road, trying to drain this wetland.
I have no more questions. Redirect, Mr. Linton?
Just a quick follow-up. So, Mr. Dack, I think you testified that you believe the property Mr. Russell's property was actually originally zoned as residential?
That's what the Springport Township told us both.
And did you have reason to believe that it was rezoned to agricultural at some point?
I'm not sure how it did go. Obviously, the farmland's agricultural, but I was told, as was Mr. Russell, by the township, that his personal property was zoned residential, and that he couldn't have those businesses that he had on there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Nothing further.
Any further witnesses?
Yes, the defendants would call Pasha Dack. So switch seats here.
And would you raise your right hand, please? You do swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? State your full name.
Asha Nada Dack.
All right, why don't you spell the first two names for us?
T as in Tom, A, S as in Sam, H, A. My middle name is N as in Nancy, A, T as in Tom, E as in dog, A.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, Ms. Dack, can you tell me where you reside?
12315 Kimler Road, Eaton Rapids, Michigan.
And do you know Dean Dack?
I do.
And how do you know Dean Dack?
He is my husband.
And how long have you resided at that residence at 123315 Kimler Road?
Since June of 1988.
And when you purchased the property, can you describe the condition of the property as far as your recollection regarding any issues with water drainage?
There was no issues with water drainage. There was no fencing except around a pool that was in the backyard, and we didn't have any problems when we first moved in.
Did there come a point where you started experiencing problems with water drainage on your property?
Shortly after Mr. Russell moved in, which I believe was either 1994 or 1995, we owned the house 7 years before he moved in. And shortly after he moved in, we noticed him filling in a drainage ditch that was in on the at the west end of our property, which is the backside. And then it started flooding our backyard.
Did Mr. Russell do anything else to modify his property?
He put wood chips and logs along the north side of the property line and built up this berm on the west side of his property with wood chips and logs.
I'm going to show you what was marked or admitted as plaintiff's exhibit 4.
Mhm.
You note to the court if that picture contains any of the modifications that you just testified to?
Yes, it does. On the north side of our fencing is the logs that I see in this picture are what he put down.
Where are the logs located in this picture?
On the north side of our fence.
No, I meant what in relation to this picture, and what other items are next to it? Where would you find the logs in this picture?
On his property line.
Oh, can you describe for the court in this picture? Are they next to your fence? I mean,
They're right next to our fence.
Okay,
They're
and so
butted up to our fence.
and are they higher than your property line or lower?
They're higher.
And that was a modification, Mr. Russell.
Yes.
And as a result of that modification, has there been issues with your property?
Yes.
And how long have these issues been going on?
Since 1995, 96, when he did this. He periodically would go through and refill them in so that it continued to stay built up.
And what kind of issues have you experienced as a result of those modifications?
Our driveway floods, our front yard floods, our backyard floods, now both of our rental properties flood out.
And this has been an ongoing issue.
Yes, sir.
And have you attempted to address the situation or problem with Mr. Russell?
Yes.
And what has been the response?
None. He's vehemently denied that there's any problem. We sent him numerous letters from 2007 through 2011 asking him to remove these items so that we would have runoff for our property and it would no longer flood. He did not sign for the letters. I sent them certified. I got them returned to me.
And are you aware, is there any kind of a business operation on Mr. Russell's property?
There's several.
What kind of business operations are there?
He has a wood mill, he had a rabbit hatchery, and his wife has some sort of a craft.
And has there been any problems from your perspective, you know, that have affected you from the operation of his businesses?
Just the noise from the mills back in the back of his property.
Can you describe the noise for the court?
Really loud sounding saws. I mean, I don't know what the machinery is that's used back there, but there were some really loud noises. We did talk to the township about it at one point.
And are you inside your own residence when you hear this?
Sometimes, yeah. In the summertime, if our windows are open and doors and stuff are open, yeah, we could hear it in the summer.
And you're aware have you seen customers coming and going from these particular businesses?
Yes.
In which they would have to drive by your residence?
Yes.
And are you aware of the drainage system for your basement, of how that operates? Can you briefly describe what that system is installed?
It's set down in a hole in our basement, and the hole fills up with water when it rains, and then it's pumped out into the yard.
And if you're looking at what was Plaintiff's Exhibit 4, is there a drain line that comes from your sump pump system?
Not in that.
Okay, so it's not in there. All right,
No.
but is there a drain line from your sump pump system?
Yes.
And does it come out onto where?
Comes out into the back, out, I don't even know how many feet, I don't know.
But whose property would it come out onto?
Ours,
And has it always been on your property?
yes.
Did there come a time where the sump pump system backed up?
Yes.
Can you tell me what occurred as far as when it backed up?
It flooded my basement, at least 2 feet of water.
As a result of the basement flooding, what happened? Did you have any damages?
We had several pieces of items that were damaged, a freezer, our furnace, a sewing machine, clothing, Christmas items, keepsake stuff that was down there being stored. There was small motors down there, chainsaws.
So prior to this occasion, had your sump pump system failed?
No,
You'd not had your basement flood previous to this?
no.
And did you investigate the cost of the sump pump system fail?
My husband did.
All right, thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Mrs. Dack, did you indicate that the discharge line from your sump pump goes to the back of your property?
It goes into our backyard about 15 feet from the back door, maybe.
And that would be back towards the Russell property, the major part of his property. That's where your temporary structures are built. Is that correct?
It goes back behind our house. It doesn't go back as far as the property line. I don't even know how long the hose is, and it's only a couple gallons of water when it pumps.
Okay, but the direction it was going was back towards where those temporary structures are located and not towards the fence. Am I correct?
If you're asking about the day that it backed up,
I'm asking about your drainage line for your sump pump.
Just today?
Today, it's right behind our gas tank, our propane tank, which is between our house and our garden.
Now this black line that is at issue in this, your husband ran the line not back towards where your garden is located. He ran it over towards the Russell property, didn't he?
Repeat that question? I'm sorry.
I said there is an issue regarding a black line that your client was pumping your basement. Is that correct?
I guess I don't understand your question. The line that pumps water from our septic system or our sub pump is in our backyard. I'm not sure the distance between our house and where it's at is. I wasn't home at the time of the incident that you're asking me about. I don't know where that black line was at the time. Today, it's between my propane tank and my garden, which is nowhere near the property line. I don't know. We have moved it. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how long it is. I don't know what you're asking me.
Did you and your husband file a complaint with the township board about 10 years ago?
In 2011, yes, we did.
And as a result of that, did the township take any action to determine that Mr. Russell was carrying on any type of operation was in violation of the zoning?
What was stated to us and him at the township board meeting was, Mr. Russell, you need to leave the decks alone because at this point you are in violation of the zoning ordinance. It is not agricultural where you live, and so you just need to leave the decks alone.
Okay. So you're saying they made no statement to him that he had to do anything with his operation, am I correct?
No, they didn't make any statement that he needed to shut it down or anything. They just told him to leave us alone.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Judge.
Any redirect, Mr. Linton?
No, Your Honor.
Any further witnesses or presentation, Mr. Linton?
Yes, we would call William Russell.
Okay, Mr. Russell?
Yes, sir.
You understand that you're still under oath?
That's correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Linton.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, I believe in your trial brief you submitted, you referenced that there was a sump pump drain line from the defendant counterplaintiff Dax directed towards your property. Is that correct?
It's correct. It was not placed where Mrs. Dax stated.
Okay, and so where was the sump pump line in relation to your property?
It ran from the house to the south to my fence, and it was sticking through the fence, pumping water onto my property when the Springport Township Police Department came out and observed water pumping through the line onto my property, at which time they informed Dax to move that line.
How would you know the source of where that fence or that drain line is coming from unless you're able to look through to the property of the Dax?
I didn't know where the source was. I only knew that they were pumping water from their property onto mine.
Well, isn't it true that you actually pulled that drain line towards the fence onto your property?
No, I didn't have to do anything with that drain line because the sheriff's department, or excuse me, the Springport Township Police Department came out, observed the water pumping onto my property, and informed Dax to remove it. I didn't have to do anything.
Well, didn't the line remain in place?
No, the line got moved. Apparently they followed what the sheriff's or the police department informed them they had to do because they were pumping water illegally onto my property.
Well, I believe you just heard the testimony of both Dean and Toshdak, who said they were never contacted by the police regarding this line. So how could they know they talked to them?
There's a police report stating that they came out in regards to that.
So isn't it true at some point that you inserted a wooden dowel into that line to block it?
They can assert anything they want, but that's not correct. There was no reason in the first place for me to do anything because the sheriff's department, excuse me, the police department informed them that they had to move that line, and the line got moved. The next day it was gone. So I assumed that they did what the police department told them they had to do because they were in violation.
So you have a mill and woodworking facility there, correct? At your property?
I have, excuse me, I have a what?
A mill and woodworking facility at your property, correct?
Yes, I have a sawmill operation.
And isn't it true that you created a perfectly sized wooden dowel to place into that sump pump line and block it?
No, that's not correct.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Questions, Mr. Williams?
Mr. Russell, let's talk about your sawmill. How many acres do you own?
Approximately 103. Probably 30 to 40.
Mr. Williams, you're, for whatever reason, your voice dropped off. We heard your client's answer, but we didn't hear your question.
Okay, I'll try to be more direct into the computer, Judge. Mr. Russell, how many acres of woods do you have?
Approximately 30 to 40 out of the 103.
And what is the zoning of your property?
We need that answer again. For whatever reason, your voices keep cutting out. Say it again.
My property is zoned agriculture, and I obviously crops are raised also.
And when did you install the equipment for doing sawmilling?
Approximately in the late 80s.
And has that been a continuous operation?
Yes, it has.
On a how would you describe your operation? Are you working there on a daily basis?
No, it's intermediate, small basis. I just do a few customers if and when they come to bring lumber to be sawed and dried, along with some that I saw and dry from my own property. But it may be 2 or 3 weeks or a month. I don't have a customer to bring in wood because once I saw the wood and it goes in the kiln to be dried, there's a 30-day period where there would be no more sawing done because I would have no place to put the wood.
When you are operating your sawmill basis, are you doing it during daylight hours?
Yes, only during daylight hours.
And again, how much of the sawmill operation is doing your own lumber compared to people bringing logs in to have them milled for by you?
It's probably 60-40, them bringing logs, me doing my own, maybe only 30% from customers coming in and then me doing the rest myself. It's not a large operation by any means.
Do you have any employees?
No, I do not.
Uh, on a monthly basis, how many days would you say this sawmill is even in operation?
If I have a customer bring in enough wood or I have enough wood of my own between the two, we would saw maybe 2 days and then that would be it because that would be the capacity of my drying kiln and it takes approximately a month to dry a load of wood. So there would be no reason to be sawing any other wood.
When this matter went before the Springport Township Board, did they take into consideration your right to farm act?
That's correct. And under the Right to Farm Act, it's my understanding I do have the right to do what I do with the sawmill.
Now, in terms of the property, Mr. Dack was testifying that there was a ditch behind on your property that you found when you surveyed. Is that correct?
No, there is no. Rare of his property that his land falls down on the line. In fact, there was a large area of mine that flooded every time we had a lot of rain because.
Mr. Williams, I'm gonna interrupt. For whatever reason, your microphone gets really muted. We could barely hear, and I could not make out anything that your client was saying. So we need to have him start over again.
I'll have him speak more slowly and loudly, Judge.
I don't think it was the level of his speaking. I think it's something with your microphone. It just occasionally drops off. I'm not sure why, but let's just start over. Usually when we start over, we can hear okay.
Okay. Mr. Russell, did you, when you bought your property, when did you have it surveyed?
I had it surveyed at the time I purchased the property because at that time, Mr. Dack had some partial buildings and stuff on would be the south side of his property onto mine. So I had the land completely surveyed at the time of purchase.
Okay. After you had purchased the land and had it surveyed, did you change the topography of the land behind his property?
No, not really. I cleaned it up to the property line, and because of the, for lack of a better word, all the debris and that on his property, I eventually just planted some ground cover or some growth to kind of make a shield, but I have not changed the topography. My land is still lower than his. There's no retaining wall or anything to impede the flow of water. In fact, the water does run onto my property and floods the area behind his.
Did you do any tiling to alleviate the water?
Yes, eventually it became so severe that I had a tile installed from the corner of my property between the driveway and the corner of Mr. Dack's around the back of Mr. Dack's property, across mine, and about 700 feet to a swamp that's on my property to drain all of that water that was coming actually from his property onto mine and flooding it. And that alleviated the problem. I have actually helped Mr. Dack out without his knowledge or otherwise understanding to alleviate the water. Unfortunately, those 3 lots are at a level that is conducive to them flooding.
Now the pictures in 3, 4, and 5, they denote that the land is falling towards your property and your property is lower than his property.
That's correct. On both the side along would be the south side of his property along the driveway between my driveway and his the property line. That land is lower and it gets water in it in the spring. Also, the water, as previously stated, runs off of the road. In fact, at one point in time, it was bad enough that Mr. Dack attempted to dig a ditch along the edge of the road onto the edge of my driveway, of which I contacted the police. They came out and instructed him to stop doing that. I also contacted the Jackson County Road Commission and explained to them that the road was tilting towards my property and Mr. Dack's, and they came out and they changed that grade to help the situation out. But it's still, when it rains real hard, the water runs onto Mr. Dack's property from the road.
Did you install anything along the fence line on your property to impede the water flowing onto your property?
No, I did not. I guess the terminology before mentioned logs along there were about probably 5 or 6 inch diameter pine logs, and they were put along there originally only to denote the property line. And I put, when I had it surveyed, then I put a fence post in along that line. And the current fence that Mr. Dack erected was put up right to the property line.
Did the wood chips you put in impede the water?
No, there's nothing to stop the flow of the water. In fact, as I stated, when the rain gets severe, it still floods along between the property line and my driveway because it's lower. But the wood chips or nothing that I have done along there impedes the transmission of water in any direction to seek its own level. We're only there to keep weeds from coming up when I had other flowering plants planted.
And the tiling you put in, was that put in to alleviate the problem between his fence line and your driveway?
Yes, it was to try and help, basically to help me with all of the water, but it actually helped Mr. Dack's property because all of his water that transmitted across onto mine was carried out from this drain. That's why he started to drain right at the very back corner of his fence and my property line so that it would try to catch the water coming from his property through the soil.
Anything else you want me to ask you? Yeah, I have no further questions.
Mr. Litton?
Mr. Russell, I guess I wanted to clarify, did you indicate that 60% of the product that you were woodworking is actually brought in from outside from the customers themselves?
I couldn't hear him.
You can't hear me?
You said 30.
Can you hear me?
If I understood your question, you were asking about the percentage of customers.
I'll just re-ask it since maybe you can hear me better now. I want to be clear. Did you say that there was either 60 or 40% of the wood that you're doing milling or woodwork on is actually brought in from outside by the customers themselves?
I can't state the exact amount since I take lumber off my own property and I saw it to do projects and stuff like that. The percentage could vary on one load. It might be that it's 80% of mine and 20% of a customer. If a customer brings in 5 or 6 logs for me to saw, and it would take the equivalent of, say, 12 to 15 logs to make a full load, then I would use my own wood to go along with that in order to do a load. I have to have a certain amount of lumber in order to dry a load. So the percentage that comes down the driveway is pretty low compared to the overall amount that I do.
Well, I was using your numbers. You said 40 to 60%. So are you changing your testimony?
Well, I'm not changing my testimony. I'm trying to clarify your question because I don't keep an exact record of when 3,000 board foot go into the kiln. Is it 2,500 of mine or is it 2,500 of a customer's? I'm saying that probably the ratio is someplace maybe 60-40%.
Okay. So I guess the point is you're actually just running a mill and woodworking operation that deals with product that was not harvested from your property, correct?
No, that's not correct.
You just testified that either 40 to 60% of it is not grown on your property.
That's true.
Okay, so the answer is yes. You are running a mill operation that you are doing work for wood that's brought out from outside sources, not harvested from your property.
Part of my operation, yes, is servicing outside people that want logs sawed and are dried, which is allowed under the Farm Act that I'm doing. But well, most of it,
you're making a legal interpretation because the Farm Act you've cited deals with tree and tree products that are farmed from your particular property. So you are bringing in outside wood in addition to the property or the wood that's been harvested from your property, correct?
I don't know. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not going to argue that point.
Okay, so then to go to the other issue, you indicated there's a pond towards the back of the property. Is that correct? There's a pond. You referenced a pond.
I referenced a pond? No, I believe Mr. Dack referenced a pond.
You made some reference to a body of water. I thought you said pond.
No, if you're talking about where my water was drained, that goes back just to a swamp area.
And there is no pond or body of water that's on your property. It's just a swamp.
No, that's not true. There is a lake on my property, probably a quarter of a mile back.
And isn't that where all the water that comes from the road naturally drains towards that body of water then? Correct?
I can't state from the topography of the land whether it all goes into that lake. It drains back to a swampy area that's behind my property.
And did you install a drainage ditch to try to drain that lake?
Drain the lake? No, it's a natural glacier lake.
What about, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I meant you called it a swamp area. Have you tried to install a drain to drain out that swamp?
I don't know what Mr. Dack was referring to, I had an area at one time that we were going to try to move the water so I could get in and do some logging. There's no ditch, or I don't know what the insinuation was, that I was trying to drain water into the lake or anything like that. That's totally incorrect.
But you indicated you did try to drain it to be able to harvest some logs from that area, correct?
Not drain per se in what you're speaking of. At one time, we were trying to move the water between two areas with a short ditch, but that is not something that ever came to fruition because of the topography. There's no way to do that.
Well, would it be fair to say that the main road that abuts your house as well as the Dax house, high point, and then all the property slopes downward from there?
No, I can't state that. I don't know the total lay of the land. I guess I don't understand your question.
Okay, well, on your property, does the water drain towards the road at all?
My property, the water on my property soaks in.
Well, you just indicated there's a wetland. Doesn't it drain towards the wetland?
I have no idea the subsurface soil consistency on where the water drains to. I mean, I have 100 acres and I have a lot of road frontage, and when it rains, the water soaks into the ground and goes away.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Mr. Russell, you did say that you had some drain tile installed. That does in fact drain towards the swamp, doesn't it?
It drains to what I call a swamp area, probably 100 yards behind my house. That area is probably an eighth of a mile or better from the lake, if you're asking about a reference. It's just a natural lower land, and that's why I had the water from the tile diverted to that area.
But the beginning of the tile is near the Dax property, is it not?
The tile starts out approximately probably 6 to 8 foot from the corner of Dax property and mine. When you come down the driveway, Mr. Dax property would be on the right-hand side, and then when his property corner turns and goes to the north, that's where I installed the tile, and then it runs at a 45-degree angle away from Dax property towards the north, and then swings to the west and goes down to the wet area where it drains out on the surface.
Right. Thank you. That's what I understood your testimony to be previously. Counsel, either of you have any further questions for Mr. Russell?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
And do either of you have any further presentation today of witnesses?
I'm sorry, not from the defendants.
Mr. Williams?
I have no other witnesses, Judge.
All right,
do
well,
have
let's take it.
point out is all.
All right, well, let's take a break here. Let's say about 15 minutes, and we'll come back on. I'm going to leave the meeting room open.